Okay, good morning. Welcome to our legislative update webinar, part one. My name is Agnieszka Carpenter, and I'm the executive director for BioME. We're a trade industry group devoted to growing bioscience in the state of Maine. This is a Zoom event, and we haven't done a Zoom event for a while, so I feel like we're back in COVID times, but fortunately, hopefully we're past that. So if you're here today, chances are you're interested in advocacy, and that's what this meeting will be all about. We have about 45 people registered, so it should be a good meeting. And I will go over some of our legislative priorities and policy updates right now. Maybe, if this allows me. Okay, sorry. So first of all, I wanted just to mention that we have a whole group of dedicated people devoted to advocacy efforts, and that's our advocacy committee. The two people on top, Claire McConnell and Mike Sexel, are our advocacy consultants from Maine Street Solutions. And then we have members of the committee. So Fran Harrison from SMRT Architects, Bethany Fortier from IDEX, Tony Perkins from Bereston Shore, Stephen Pulsu from MMQCI, Valerie Young from Bigelow Laboratory of Ocean Sciences, Leah Waterston, who you will hear from in a minute, and Mike McKernan from Jackson Laboratory. And we meet every 2 weeks. So in terms of policy goals, BioMaine works in a nonpartisan manner with our members, partners, and the public to do 4 things. One is to monitor current state legislation that affects our members and the life sciences community in Maine. And we have a legislative tracker on our website where we list all of the bills that we're monitoring. So if you're interested in that, I'll paste a link to this tracker into the chat shortly. We're also, one of our goals is to inform the public, our membership, on what we're doing in terms of policy. And so that's part of why we're doing this event today. Another goal is to mostly educate our policymakers and government agencies on the needs for the sector. And another one, this is very important, our goal is to collaborate. And I see a lot of our partners are here today, so welcome. We're looking forward to working with you on some of the bills this session. And then we have some very specific priorities. Those are mostly focused on economic development and regulatory environment. So one of the first priority is to promote a supportive tax and regulatory environment. And you'll see, we'll talk about 5 different bills today, and quite a few of them have to do with that. Another priority is to build strong bioscience workforce by supporting STEM education and workforce development initiatives. To strengthen incentives for innovation and business, including funding for higher ed and research capital for startups, and then to increase capital to advance bioscience in the state. So as you can see, a lot of focus on tax, regulatory environment, and funding. Okay, so now we will start going over some of those bills. I also just wanted to say that we will have some time for questions and answers at the end, but please utilize the chat if you would like to just introduce yourself, or if you would like to ask a question, we can get to that question at the end. So we'll go with the first bill. Last session, we had a bill called an Act to Establish a Mobile Learning Lab, LD 1389. I never know how to say it. 1389. So this bill was sponsored by President Troy Jackson, and it passed. And the bill basically will allow us to fund the operations of the Maine Mobile Learning Lab. I'm not sure if you've heard about it yet or not. It's a collaboration between Educate Maine, BioMaine, and the Roux Institute. And it's basically a lab that will be driving all over Maine, and the the audience for this is middle school students. So this trailer will be taken to various middle schools all across Maine. It'll be parked at the school's parking lot a week at a time. And the students, especially in rural areas of Maine, will be able to go and experience hands-on biotech and science. We've discovered that a lot of the schools across Maine don't have these capabilities. So the idea is to expose students to hands-on science. Okay, and with that, I will hand it over to Claire McConnell and Mike Saxel from Maine Street Solutions.
Thank you so much. I'm just waiting for the screen to change to the next slide. There we go. Okay. Agnieszka just shared something about success from last year in the 2-year legislative cycle. I guess I'll just start by saying Maine has a 2-year legislative cycle. So the bill that she just talked about passed during the first year. The other bills we'll talk about today are ones that are still active this year in the second year of the legislative cycle. These are bills that were carried over, introduced last year and then carried over to this year. The first one that we'll talk about is LD 416, which is an act to authorize a general fund bond issue for research, development, and commercialization. The prime sponsor for this bill is Senator Teresa Peirce from Falmouth. And there are lots of other sponsors on the bill as well, from both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, and folks from leadership in the legislature, and sort of really key allies have come together to sponsor this bond for research, development, and commercialization. This is a bill that Senator Peirce went ahead and put it in herself, but once BioME saw that it had been submitted for last year, we sort of adopted it as one of the top priorities for the organization, and BioME has really stepped up to be the leader of the advocacy effort for this piece of legislation. So what it is a $100 million bond issue. And bonds, of course, if they're passed by the legislature, go in front of the voters for approval by the voters. So should this bond be approved by Maine voters, that $100 million would go through the Maine Technology Institute for MTI to grant out to institutions, businesses, nonprofits, public entities throughout the state for research, development, and commercialization. So it's very similar to a previous bond effort that was passed by voters back in 2017 and administered by Maine Technology Institute. It's really the same setup as that one. The funding would be available for all 7 sectors that MTI works within, and all funds would need to be matched at least on a 1-to-1 basis by other funding. So this is where a lot of our advocacy effort has been focused over the 2-year session. And I'll just talk briefly about sort of one part of our advocacy effort that we are excited about and have seen a lot of success with so far. And that is, we have brought together stakeholders from sort of the R&D community to start and support a research, development, and commercialization caucus at the Maine legislature. So the legislators come together and create caucuses for any number of topics. There's an aging caucus, there's a children's caucus, there's an environmental priorities caucus, sort of an organizing framework for legislators for any number of issue areas. But there was no caucus focused on the innovation economy and on research, development, and commercialization. So we, along with other stakeholders, brought this idea to Senator Peirce and to other legislators, and had a great response from them. We have 4 co-chairs of the new caucus. And so Senator Peirce is our one of our Senate co-chairs, along with Senator Trey Stewart from Aroostook County. And then we have House Majority Leader Mo Terry and House Appropriator Representative Sowen Millett, who's a longtime member of the legislature and various administrations, all co-chairing the caucus together. So they represent, again, both sides of the aisle, and really key people in this conversation, coming together to lead the legislative caucus. And we have helped by organizing meetings for them. And these meetings we've organized have been lunch and learns, where we've brought in speakers from the different technology sectors and had informative learning meetings for the new caucus throughout the legislative session so far. So it's been successful. We have a couple more lunch and learns planned. We've had great attendance and really important legislators in the room and appreciating the sessions. And it does seem to be helping us build some momentum in the legislature for this particular piece of legislation, but also longer term, bigger picture, just for this topic going forward. You know, this is something we can keep going beyond this year, keep the caucus meeting in future years, and just hopefully create a more continuous level of conversation around R&D in the legislature going forward. So that was a lot of talking. Maybe I'll pause for a minute, and I'm happy to take any questions or talk about sort of the outlook for this piece of legislation for the rest of the year.
Okay, thanks, Clara. If we have questions, yep.
Yeah, if there are no questions, I just add that the last time we passed a research and development bond was 2017. Governor LePage was governor, conservative Republican. The Senate president was Mike Thibodeau, a relatively conservative Republican. Speaker of the House was Mark Eves, a very liberal Democrat. And we passed it. That result of that $45 million that was eventually passed was $1.4 billion of economic activity. Something that you should all think about, and I know you probably feel this firsthand, is that consistent investment in research helps many Maine companies and research facilities draw down federal and private dollars to strengthen their economic future. And Maine lags behind the rest of New England in our investment, almost 2 to 1. We lag behind the country by about 50%. And we need to put a face on this so that we are not having to do this in fits and starts, that investment in Maine's research economy and Maine's life science economy. The 2 things I think you all could do is, number 1 is to reach out to your local legislators, and we can write up a kind of a how-to for you on how to do that, and ask them to support the bond. And the second thing is, we would love to know what the coolest things you know about that are happening in the state of Maine. You know, what are the great things that you're working on that we can highlight? And I know Agnieszka's been working on that with Brianna as well. But we would like to elevate the work you're doing so people understand not only the economic importance of the research economy, but the social and world importance of the innovations you're creating. We want you to be the face of this effort. If Clara and I are the face of this effort, we're not going to win. We need you guys to share with us the amazing things you're doing.
That is so true, Mike. Thank you for this. And last year during the session, we had several members of our community testify in front of the committee. So we're hoping that we'll have similar activation among our members this year. And can you remind us, Mike and Clara, the voting for this will be sometime probably in March? Probably.
March or April, probably. Yeah. This session that we're in right now is only scheduled to run through late April. So that's our time frame that we're working within. Bonds tend to be one of the last things the legislature takes up. So I think, March or April is probably a safe bet. Although we'd love to do it anytime, whenever they let us take it to the floor, we're ready.
Yeah,
But
the sooner the better.
the sooner the better. But yes, sometime before late April. So really, in terms of advocacy from members of BioMaine, now is the perfect time to reach out to your local legislators, your state representative, your state senator, and urge them to support this legislation.
I would agree, and we will have an opportunity to do that at our legislative reception on February the 28th. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I think also just individual outreach through a phone call or email or however you want to do it will help us a lot. Okay.
Absolutely, it's crucial.
Okay, do we want to move to the next bill?
Sure.
Okay.
I did see one question in the chat that I will answer when I take a pause. I have something I can drop in the chat to answer that question.
Okay.
So the next bill actually is one that has been led by Focus Maine. So I am going to turn it over to Leo from Focus Maine.
Thanks, Clara. Hi, everyone. Leo Waterston from Focus Maine. So LD 1475, as you can see here, was a grant program to promote biomanufacturing and biotechnology development in Maine. Sponsor is President Troy Jackson. This is a grant program that would provide grant awards totaling up to $4.5 million in equal parts over 5 years, based on the amount of investment involved in these facilities. No more than $900,000 per year may be granted as part of the provisions of the grant program. So it's for biotechnology incubator facilities, which I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with, but just to recap in case anyone isn't, these are typically facilities that have wet laboratory space as well as office space that is sort of modular and can be tailored to the needs of different tenants, or typically early stage or earlier stage startup companies or research organizations that need access to that combination of lab space and office space. And they typically provide some programming and sort of connections to the broader bioscience community in that location, and can be a real sort of catalyst to drive growth in the biosciences and strengthen academic industry partnerships. And it's been a very successful model in Boston and Cambridge. So we certainly see it as a great opportunity to help grow the sector here in Maine. And then with the biomanufacturing component, those are biomanufacturing facilities for drug development or therapeutics or medical devices or a number of different applications. So this is a program that would incentivize the development of those types of facilities. And as you heard from Clara, this bill was carried over with many other bills in last session by the Appropriations Committee. So we're working to try to get the committee and leadership to fund it in the supplemental budget. And we'll continue to work with various members to achieve that and appreciate any support that others want to lend to the effort. And that's all I have for updates.
Thanks so much, Leo. And I just want to say, if you look at all of the bills in the legislature, there aren't that many that are very bioscience specific. This one is, so it's definitely something I would like our membership to pay attention to and hopefully support. Thanks so much. Okay, we're gonna move to the next one. Okay, Clara.
Okay, so the next bill is LD 643, an act to promote research and development in the state by increasing the research expense tax credit. So we do have an R&D tax credit on the books here in Maine, but it has not been adjusted or increased in any way, I think in about 15 years or so. So this is a bill from Majority Leader Terry that is looking to increase the tax credit. the way the current tax credit is structured, it also has to be incremental investments are the only investments that are eligible. So by that I mean business has to take the average of the past 3 years of investment in R&D, and then anything incremental to that, they're eligible to apply for the tax credit for that. And so it just doesn't really support businesses that have more of a steady investment in R&D in their budget, or who aren't necessarily growing tremendously year over year, but still are doing R&D and really should be eligible for the credit. So this bill was introduced last year. The taxation committee seemed to be a little bit lukewarm around the idea. They were interested in potentially seeing if the bill could enhance the way that we report and understand the economic impact of a credit like this and sort of see the return on investment. And they encourage the sponsor to do a little bit more work on the bill and bring them an amendment. So there's actually a work session scheduled on this one coming up, I believe, in the next couple of weeks, and we will see if the sponsor has worked on any amended language. I know the State Chamber of Commerce was interested in supporting her and working with her on some sort of an amendment to hopefully salvage this bill and make some progress on this credit during this session. So that's the update for now, and hopefully in the next few weeks we'll see some progress and have another update.
Thanks, Clara. If anybody has any questions, once again, please leave them in the chat or leave them till the end of this meeting. And we're moving on to the next one. That's STEM education related.
Yes, the next one is LD 871, an act to provide support for the Maine Discovery Museum's informal science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education programs throughout the state. And so this bill went through the Education Committee, and what it ended up being through an amendment is basically a $150,000 a year appropriation to the Maine Discovery Museum for the for their programming, and specifically, I believe the Maine State Science Fair, if I'm not mistaken. And so it is at this point structured as ongoing funding. So if it's passed as is and funded as is, it would be $150,000 a year on an ongoing basis. And so that's where this currently stands. It was carried over on the appropriations table, so it's awaiting funding. The issue is there are many different things awaiting funding on the appropriations table. Leo talked about a different one earlier. And so it's really just a matter of competition with other priorities. And so we will see at the end of this session how all the money is divvied up and whether the legislature decides to invest this $150,000 a year in the Maine Discovery Museum.
Thanks, Clara. And just in case anybody's curious about the Maine Discovery Museum, or maybe you haven't heard about it, it's a pretty much science museum, the only one in Maine that's located in Bangor, and they do a lot of programming, especially for rural schools all across Maine that have to do with STEM. Very passionate people working on promoting STEM education in the state. So there are a few of those STEM education related bills in the legislature right now, and we just picked one to show you an example of something that we're supporting. Okay, I think we have one more. Oh, no, we don't. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Mike, I knew I had that wrong. It's not the science fair. What is it?
Is it my
Maine Invention Convention. Okay.
Yep.
There was another bill that had to do with the science fair last year, so sometimes we get It's a lot to take in. So those are the examples of bills that we're monitoring. Some of them we're supporting very actively. This session, our focus is definitely on the first two that we showed you. So the R&D bond and the grant for biomanufacturing. But there's also a number of bills that we're monitoring that have to do with either labor law or anything that could potentially affect our industry. And once again, if you're interested, please talk to us or go to our policy page on our website. But since we have you here, we also wanted to give you an overview of the new incentive program that the Department of Economic and Development Community has in the works. So we've invited Phoenix McLaughlin from DECD to talk about this program. Phoenix, I think you're with us.
Yes, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning. And we've put the slide that you provided right here.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, that's pretty much sums it up, so I don't need to speak. No, I'm just kidding. But the background here is that DECD and the administration worked on replacing Maine's business incentive programs with something new that's a little better suited to Maine's current economy and outlook for our economic situation. And so specifically what I mean is Pine Tree Development Zones and employment tax increment financing, which I took a quick scroll down the participant list. I think maybe a couple of you businesses may be a part of. Those will no longer be accepting new applications after the end of this year. Anyone currently in the program, they can see out their certification as they please. Additionally, the Maine Capital Investment Credit, which is a small state tax credit that adds on to federal bonus depreciation, that is no longer going to be available after the end of this year as well. Because we are going to be instituting a new tax credit program, business incentive program, really, they call Deergo Business Incentives, and it's more squarely focused on capital investment and worker training. And so as you can see on the screen here, so specifically the benefit is a 10% capital investment tax credit. It applies to most of the state. It is 5% if the activity is in Cumberland, Saginaw, and York counties. And then it's $2,000 per worker trained during the year. So if you take nothing else away from this, just remember that, either 5 or 10% capital investment tax credit and $2,000 per worker trained. But I'll say a little more about what that means and who it applies to. So again, it is for businesses and it is sector limited. And the reason why I'm here today is that one of those sectors includes in the statute, it's scientific research and development services, as well as manufacturing and some others that may be relevant to you all as well. And in terms of what capital investment means, it's actually pretty broad. It can be both new construction, so real property, it can be equipment, machinery. There are some specific things are included that are mentioned in the statute, like vehicles, like a truck you would register on the road, that's not included. But a lot of stuff is. If you're considering expanding or making investment in your business, definitely take a look at it because it very well might be eligible. In terms of training, it can be it's somewhat broad. It does need to be something that is blessed, I would say, by a state program, whether that's the community college, university, or something else, including private trainings that are go through an approval process through the Workforce Development Compact, for example. But that might be of interest for you all. It does include not just more certificate type trainings, but it also can cover 2 4-year degrees, master's degrees, PhDs theoretically, if the company is actually investing in that for their employees. So in terms of how it works and the how a company would actually join, for those of you who are familiar with the previous programs, Pine Tree and EDIF, and those were tied to employment. like net employment growth, and there's this whole thing around submitting but for a letter before you apply and all that. Those things don't apply in this case. So the business needs to be in an eligible sector, needs to be making eligible capital investment or worker training. And the process is going to be as simple as you will apply to DECD and you'll tell us what you're planning to do, and we'll review that and say, yep, that does check out. That is a generally eligible activity. And then the business goes, makes the investment, does the training, whatever, and then you apply for the tax credit when you file your taxes for that year, and you get the credit. So it's a lot more straightforward in terms of how to access. It's broader in that, again, you don't need to be having net new employment growth to join. You can't. There is a provision. There can't be a major layoff before you take the credit, but it is going to be a lot more accessible in that way, and it's pretty substantial as well. So it is capped at $2 million per business per year, and for 1 year's worth of investment, you can carry that over for basically you can take that credit for up to 5 years. So what that translates to basically is for 1 year's worth of investment, you could receive up to $10 million if you were maxing out the credit. And also of interest is that it is refundable up to a certain amount. So each year up to 500,000 can be refunded to the business. And so what that means is if you don't owe income tax to the state of Maine for whatever reason, maybe you're a new business and you're just not in the profit generation stage yet, or you have some other loss that's offsetting your income, then you can still get part of the credit. And this is the only other thing, again, since I think potentially a couple of you are currently in the Pine Tree program, you can't do both at the same time, but you would have the option to, decide to wind down your Pine Tree certification and then choose to join Deere going forward. So this timeline is that we're planning to start accepting applications July 1st of this year. That's what we're shooting for, I should say. And then this would apply for activities starting in 2025. So January 1st, 2025, if you're making that investment or worker training, you could potentially be claiming this. I do want to also mention that we are in the public comment period for our proposed rules for the program, which address the application process a bit, as well as flesh out the definition of the sectors and what qualified business activity means, which is how we would kind of determine that the activity is eligible. I can put a link to that in the chat. The public comment period closes February 23rd. And you're welcome to, if you look that over and you have a comment that you think something should be considered or even changed, you're welcome to share that. And just a fair warning, if you do that, we have to respond formally after the close of the comment period. So you will probably just get like a thanks from me and not a good response. And it's not because I'm putting you off. It's just, well, I am literally putting you off to the formal public comment reply period. So yeah, please do take a look at that. We're always interested to hear from folks if they think it's going to align with the reality of their business. And if there's anything we can adjust, if not. So I think that is the general overview. We are excited about it. We think it will be a good match for a lot more of the activity that we need in the state of Maine. And yeah, always interested to hear what businesses think about it and if you have any questions.
Okay, thanks so much, Phoenix. And thank you to DECD for all your support and keeping our sector in mind and, revamping this program to make it more accessible. Okay, so let's see what we have next. My big call out to all of you today is to get involved. Advocacy can seem like a foreign land. It did to me until I started talking to Claire and Mike, and they're so good at explaining everything and helping us navigate through all the processes in Augusta. So I just wanted to say, if anybody's interested or passionate about advocacy or would really like to make a change, you can do it. You can there are many levels in which you can get involved. as I mentioned, we have our advocacy committee open to our members. If anybody's interested, please let me know. But also you can just pick up a phone and call your legislator. We can coach you. We can tell you what to say. We can even point you to the right person. And as we said here, your voice is important. And I think Mike Saxel said that earlier. We, Main Street Solutions can go and talk on our behalf. I can go and talk on our behalf. But what the legislators see the most impactful is to hear from the businesses and the institutions directly. I would encourage you to go to our website. I mentioned that before, biomaine.org policy. There is a legislative tracker there that we update every Friday. So if you're interested to know what's happening with all these bills, we mentioned 5 bills today, but there are a lot more that we're tracking, some of them in a little more passive way, but still updating it every Friday. That's a good way to keep track. You can see where when the hearings are, and if there will be a period of time for testifying or any more direct support opportunity, we will let you know via email or on our social media. Okay, I also wanted to mention the event that we have coming up. So on February the 28th at the Senator Inn in Augusta, we are having our annual legislative reception where state legislators will come. And so we would love to have as many industry members there as possible. This is a great opportunity to talk to our senators and representatives face to face and just talk to them about the importance of R&D and favorable tax and incentive environment for life sciences specifically. I think registration for this is open, so you can just go to our website and register. Hopefully the weather will cooperate with us on February the 28th, and I'm hoping to see many of you there. I also wanted to thank our sponsors, without whom it would be not possible to put together events like this one and the reception later this month. I will stop my share now. I see there's some activity in the chat. I'm always having trouble monitoring the chat while I'm talking, but let's see. Someone had a question.
I think there was one question for me. I could quickly just say it is limited to for-profit entities. So the Dirigo Business Incentives credit is a tax credit and it's available for for-profit entities. And I did put a link in the chat to where the proposed rules are, and that also includes a link to the statute. So if folks are interested in looking at that language, they can find that there.
Okay, and I see Mike McKernan has his hand up.
Thanks, Agnieszka. So you mentioned the legislative reception on February 28th. I guess what I'd like to do is recommend that people make a day of it and show up at Augusta earlier at that day too, because at 11 a.m. we're having an R&D lunch and learn. And so this is attached to the caucus that you were describing earlier. And I think that it would be great for people on this call to go to that lunch and learn. They've been pretty well attended. We've had, anywhere from 30 to 45 legislators at each one. It's been great. We did the biotech lunch and learn several weeks ago. And the 28th, Mike Saxel or Clara, remind me, what is the topic? You've done like 100 times, but you'll have to do it again.
That's okay. We're doing a combo because we have to fit so many topics into just a few sessions. So we're doing a combination session on the 28th. It'll be the forest products sector and environmental technologies sector. And so we'll bring in speakers. So a little afield from what you all do, certainly with biotech, or biosciences, but still, I think an important forum to learn about a different technology sector, but also be there with legislators, talk to them face to face, and share your stories and do some advocacy at the State House. So I agree, Mike. We would welcome whoever wants to come on the 28th. We'll be around and can help introduce you to folks. And then, of course, we have the legislative reception that evening.
I just posted names of all the legislators, and you can go in and find your own legislator from your community. And it'd be great if you sent them a brief email and just said, hey, if you decide to come, hey, I'm going to be in Augusta for the reception or for the lunch and learn, or for both. And I'd love to meet with you and visit for a few minutes to talk about what we do and why the research economy is important in Maine. It's a little daunting, but you can do it. And if you want one of Clara or me or anybody else to come with you and have those conversations, we can help you do those. Jerry is a pro. She could go with you. I'm just looking around. Leo's a pro. He can go with you. Mishka, Mike McKernan. There's a bunch of folks on here who are very comfortable. Brianna in the State House, and we can all, Billy, we can all go with you to, if you're nervous about doing that kind of outreach. But it really, really is important. So come to one, come to the other, come to both. That would be best.
That's great.
But make sure you let your legislator know you're coming, so they get the level of your local investment in these issues.
Yes, absolutely. And the lunch and learns are pretty casual. The nice thing about those, someone in the chat, April, asked if you need to register. You do not need to register. You just show up. And the nice thing is that in that room, you have the legislators who are interested in R&D. So it's already the captive audience. Similarly, at our reception, those are the legislators who just genuinely want to know about bioscience. And really, our legislators are pretty accessible and open to discussion. So yeah, I would say take advantage of either of those opportunities. And Mike McKernan, thank you for mentioning that. And also thanks for clarifying on the Maine State Science Fair. Hopefully we can get that funded next session. Okay, does anybody have any other questions about either any specific bill or just in general? Go ahead, Mike.
Just one more and then I'll stop. I just want to, and this bill is not currently, I believe, on the BioME Legislative tracker, but I'm sure you'll correct me if I am wrong. But I think it's important from my point of view, from my role at the Jackson Laboratory, and just a member of this audience today, to bring up, and that's a bill. I'll get you the number here and the title. It's LD 1496, an act to prohibit non-compete clauses. And this bill has passed out of the Labor and Housing Committee, and the bill does what it says it does. It limits non-compete clauses. Non-compete clauses may be used in your business. They may be used in your organization in a reasonable way to protect your intellectual property or technological know-how or your trade secrets. You may use them. And what this bill does is it does not eliminate non-compete clauses, but it restricts them in two important ways. The first way is that it restricts organizations from requiring a non-compete clause to anybody who is not an owner of the business. So that's restriction number one. If you're not an owner, according to this bill, you can't be bound by a non-compete clause. The second restriction is based on salary. If you do not earn 400% of a poverty line, and when I did the math, that's roughly $58,000. So if you earn less than $58,000, then you may not be bound by a non-compete agreement. So those two things, they're not stacking, it's either or. And so if you utilize non-compete agreements and that's important to your operation, please have this bill in mind. The bill has passed out of committee, and so the advocacy pathway now is to contact your legislators before it comes up on the floor. And I don't know when that's going to be. I don't have that date, but just to be aware of that bill.
Thank you, Mike. We will add this bill to our tracker. And speaking of our tracker, just wanted to show everyone, in case you don't go to our website, just want to show you what it looks like. So here it is. It's updated every Friday. You can see all the bill numbers here on the left, because I realize it can be a little bit confusing us talking about it today. if you click on this, it'll take you to the bill text. And then here it tells you who the sponsor is, a description, and then in this status column, you see what's happening and when any type of hearing might be. That's the part that keeps getting updated. And as you can see, this keeps going and going. It's not that many, but we basically, at the beginning of the session, sit together and find all the legislation that has impact on our membership. And that's the legislation we're tracking. So I encourage you, if you're interested in those efforts, to keep checking that. And let us know if you would like to help or if you're interested in anything specific. We're open to collaboration. As I said, that's one of our goals. And just to let you know, this was the first legislative call of this nature, and we're planning to do another one in March to give you some updates and another one in April. And hopefully we'll have some good news for you. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Just a thanks to you, Agnieszka, for organizing this. Very, very helpful. And the resources that you all have put together are great. So really appreciate the convening. It's a big help.
Thanks so much, Jerry. Okay, with that, I will give you your Friday back. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully we'll see you in March. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.